we tried to stop him because he was not following us. But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than to have 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell where the worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
It was just a few weeks ago in August that I chose to depart from the lectionary text and tell you a story. Another story of King David's reign, but this one about his daughter Tamar. Today I stick with the lectionary, but not the text that Greg read to us from the Hebrew Scriptures, rather the alternate text from the book of Esther. You may be relieved that I'm not preaching on that gospel we just heard. Not that this is much better. This little book of Esther, just 10 chapters long, is the story of another saving of the Jewish people, but this time by a young woman. It's an odd book, the only one in the Bible that makes no explicit mention of God. It's filled with hyperbole and is considered to be a satirical look at power and empire. It's set in an ancient Persian capital nearly 500 years before the birth of Jesus. The Jewish characters in the story are those who chose not to return to Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. So they live under the rule of the Persian king, who in this story is characterized as pompous and erratic, extravagant, and easily manipulated. The story opens with a series of lavish banquets to show off the wealth and the splendor of the king's realm. On one of those nights, he summons his queen Vashti in order to display her beauty to all those who are gathered. She refuses to appear. The king's advisors convince him to replace her as queen because she has not only dissed him, but has set an example for women everywhere to show contempt for their husbands. There will be no end to the contempt and wrath that will grow in the kingdom. The king complies, sends out a decree ordering that all women shall give honor to their husbands, as husbands must be the masters of their houses. Soon after, he sends an edict inviting all young women to come to the harem in the capital to audition for the role of queen. A Jewish man in the city, Mordecai, sent his adopted daughter, Esther, who has grown to be beautiful and well-loved. She enchants the king and receives the crown, but neither Mordecai nor Esther have revealed that they are Jews. Meanwhile, Mordecai happens upon information that he shares about a plan to assassinate the king. He also makes a mortal enemy of Haman, who has risen to the post of prime minister. He has made Haman angry by refusing to bow to him. The enraged Haman, who finds out that Mordecai is a Jew, plots to annihilate all of the Jews in the kingdom. He gets the king's ear and a decree to make that happen. Queen Esther is now the only possible hope for the Jews. But there's a problem. No one may approach the king without his express invitation. And she has not been invited into his presence for more than 30 days. To plead for her people, she's going to have to go into court knowing that unless the king holds out his golden scepter to her, she will be put to death, just for going without an invitation. But Mordecai prevails upon her, saying, "Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silence at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this." And Esther, after calling for the Jews in the city and in her service to fast for 3 days, says, "After the fast, I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Do not think that this was an empty threat. First of all, we never hear of Vashti again. Maybe she's back in the harem, but who knows where she is. Besides, at that time, Israel was still under Persian rule. So if Esther failed, all the Jews would be wiped out. For this, she was willing to risk everything she had for such a time as this. Tragically, the reality of power and its misuse have not been eliminated in our modern world. People's lives are still expendable, sometimes by actual death, and at other times by the unrelenting pain from a trauma like sexual assault. Pain exacerbated by our culture's failure to hear and to believe, and instead to blame those who have been victims. Many, many people, mostly women, but also men, have had the courage to step forward these past many months to tell their stories, knowing that they would be likely to be characterized as whining or overreacting and blamed for the way they dressed or drank or led someone on. This has, of course, come to a head this past week with Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's willingness to risk her reputation and the safety of her family to tell her story for what she believes is the greater good of our country. Friends, perhaps for the Church of Jesus Christ, we have come to such a time as this. A time when we can stand with those who have such stories that they have been too fearful to tell. We can listen and encourage. We can assure them that they are loved and that what happened to them is not their fault. I ask those who have been assaulted or abused, and there are many, even right here in this room, if you have spoken out, help your brothers and sisters who have not yet had the courage. Support one another. For those of you who have not experienced such trauma, I beg you to listen, to refrain from judging or dismissing, to set aside the excuses like boys will be boys. He didn't really mean anything by it. She misunderstood or exaggerated. And please, lose the question. If it's true, Why didn't she report it years ago? For the church, can we be a safe place for those with stories to tell and festering wounds to begin to heal? Can we repent of all of the ways that the church has, for millennia, failed to respect the dignity of every human being, has maintained the tradition and practices that perpetuate the favoring of one gender, one race, one class, thereby diminishing others? The story of Esther had a happy ending. The king offered the golden scepter, learned that Haman had misled him, and the Jews are saved. Will our story have such a happy ending? Who knows?